Hello and welcome to my channel, Mr. Cool George. I'm a filmmaker and I like telling stories. So if you like hearing mysterious, suspense-filled stories with a twist, then you have come to the right place, to the right channel. That's exactly what I do, and I like telling my stories. So without wasting any time, let's get into today's story. So they were roaming around the forest for the first 48 hours and then trying to get outside the forest, but they couldn't. So they then came back to that original destination where the kidnapper had actually created that grave to bury Carolyn. So they just came back to that same destination. But anyway, they were so disappointed, they were so stressed out. But luckily for them, then they found this miraculously another bag with more supplies of water and food. And then, not only that, this time they found a detailed map of the area. So surprise, surprise. So again, this was also planted by Julian. So after hearing all this, the police couldn't believe what they were hearing, you know. So they asked Julian, so you telling you organized everything, was at any point Carolyn was part of it? You guys both decided to do something like a prank like this or what? So then Julian said to the police, no, she had no idea. All this time, Carolyn had no idea about it. It was all his planning. So then the police were like, but why would you do something like this to her? Why would you do this? What for? So then Julian confessed to the police that, you know, because Carolyn, they were both like strict Christian believers and raised in that faith. And for someone like Carolyn, having any kind of physical relationship before marriage was a big no. And she was at the time, like I said, you know, she was only 17 years of age, and you know, she was still studying, so she didn't want to do you know, anything like that before marriage. But our hero Julian could not wait, so he come up with this brilliant plan in his mind to kidnap his girlfriend and do this whole thing to convince her to get what he wants. So this was the design, so this was the plan. So he planned all these things like I described before, and you know, that's how he, you know, made this whole plan. And then, you know, in the forest, you need to understand that, you know, they were totally naked, or mostly naked, because they had hardly any clothes to wear in the forest. And all this time there's no one around, it's only two of them. And the daytime it's very hot, and they're burning, there's sunburn. But in the nighttime it's extremely cold, and they had this only one sleeping bag that they miraculously found from that place where I've explained, you know, that grave was. So this was also Julian's idea. So in the night times, you know, they will be sleeping in that same sleeping bag because they had no other thing. However, after all these situations and circumstances, by every time Julian tried to get what he wants, Carolyn each time refused, and she said no. So after the number of days passed, like they spent almost 7 days, you know. So during all these 7 days, nothing happened. So Julian got frustrated, and he realizes nothing is going to happen. So it's just a waste of time. So he finally miraculously escaped from that forest, or he found the way. But all these 7 days of time, it was horror for Carolyn, because for her, in her mind, there are, you know, these guys who kidnap them so they can find them anytime and kill them. So she was really praying, and she was really, like in that state of mind where she couldn't think of anything else. She was already in that survival mode. She knew she's going to survive. But all this time, Julian could have been very casual, because all these things is organized by him. So he really clearly knows that there are no ONS, there are no evil gang members who are going to take their life. So he was cool about it. But it was the polar opposite for poor Caroline for all these 7 days. So obviously the police promptly arrested Julian for this crazy kidnapping idea. And then this whole thing happened in the year 2008. So obviously the justice system will take its time. So in the year 2011, when it was time after the court case was going on, but all this time, Julian had actually got parole, or he was in bail, and he was outside. So he was supposed to go to the court in 2011 for hearing his verdict. So what he again did was, he decided to escape from the justice system. So he came up with another brilliant idea. So this time what he did was, he took a fake passport and a fake Indian passport. We don't know yet how he managed to get it, but it was actually a passport that gone missing from an Indian tourist when he was in Australia. So this was reported to the police that he missed his passport, but somehow, we don't know yet, that Julian ended up getting that passport. And what he did was, he actually dyed his hair into jet black, and he had all his eyebrows into black. And we got to also realize that Julian's background is of European, German background. He's originally from Germany. So he migrated from Germany to Australia with his parents when he was very young. So he had blue eyes. For that, I don't know, he couldn't do really much about it. And then he applied fake tan. In fact, he applied enough fake tan on his skin that could even tan an entire German village, in my opinion. He applied so much fake tan just to look like an Indian. And then he somehow managed to fool the Australian authorities into believing, into convincing them in this fake passport that he's an Indian who is returning from Australia after holidays. I don't know how he pulled that off, but as soon as he landed in India, in Chennai, in the airport, there when they looked at it, so there is a man with blue eyes and apparently more tanned than the whole, Kardashian family, and without an Indian accent. So the Indian authorities immediately spotted his 16th century drama level makeup, and they decided that he cannot be admitted to India because he's not an Indian returning from Australia after holidays. So they immediately knew that something is wrong. So they promptly sent him back to Australia, or extradited him back to Australia, and he ended up in jail. So the Australian system actually gave him 7 years and about 9 months prison time for his kidnapping. And then, as a bonus, they gave him another 6 months for trying to evade from the Australian justice system. And then he spent his time in jail with the Australian authorities because he planned to evade from him and try to make. So whatever it is, one thing about Julian is that he came to Australia when he was just an infant. In fact, he was just 1 year old. So practically he came to Australia wearing his diapers, and he spent the rest of his 21 years in in Australia, but he never applied for citizenship. All his family, I mean, like he got another sister, so she is Australian. She's an Australian citizen, even though she's also from the same parents, and she's also of German background. His parents are also German, but they are, because they are settled in Australia, so they are all Australian citizens. But somehow, this dude didn't apply for citizenship. Hence, the Australian authorities decided to deport him to Germany. Now you got to understand, this dude came to Australia wearing his nappies, and he was all time he spent his whole life in Australia. So I guess he must be more Australian than a kangaroo. However, the Australian authorities didn't consider any of that, so they decided to deport him back to Germany, and they sent him back to Germany, where apparently he complained that he doesn't speak any German, he don't know anybody there, and he considered himself as an Australian. So it's a very unfair thing that happened to him. But anyway, so guys, that's the end of the story. And if you like the story, let me know in comments, or do not forget to subscribe